Okay, we are continuing our lesson, and now we are on check patterns for eighth notes. Okay, we've already gone over the check pattern 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1 te, 2 te, 3 te, 4 te, and we already did number 1, which was 1 and 2, 3 and 4, right? So we were getting into 2 because that's where we got into some trouble, and we were running out of time in class. So here's number 2. Remember, eighth notes. When you have an eighth note with one flag, whether it's beamed or not, when you have an eighth note on a number, what has to follow the number? And, always. Now, same thing, an eighth note, whether it's beamed or flagged, what always has to come after an and? The next number, not E, because we're not doing 16th notes. Now, let's think about quarter notes. Quarter notes go from a number to a number. Yes? But then it's a little tricky when the quarter notes are on when they start on the and. When a quarter note starts in the and, it's not going to go to the next number because that would be an eighth note. It would go to the next what? Here's the way I think about it. Let's say the distance between a quarter and a quarter is that space of a eraser. So that was 1 to 2. If I move that over to the and, where did this one move over to? The and. Okay? So if you have a quarter note that starts in the and, it's going to go to the next and. Don't let that mess you up, because a lot of kids will see that quarter note on the and go, what's the next quarter? Oh, quarter notes are numbers. Well, not necessarily. So some of that will make more sense when we're doing the context, okay? Let's see. What's the very first thing? Obviously, it's going to be 1. What comes after an eighth note? One flag. Come on. And? Now, what comes after an and on that's an eighth note with one flag, too. So what comes after an and? The next number. So it's 2 in parentheses. Now that's an eighth rest. What has to come after a number on an eighth? What comes after a number on an eighth? And, exactly. All right? And. Now, after an and is the next number, 3. And that's going to repeat. 3 and 4 and. Make sure you got that. You writing it down? Okay. Bar line happens. The first thing, whether it's a rest or it's a note, has to be 1. What kind of note is that? That's an eighth note, right? So what has to follow an eighth note on 1? And. Now looky here. We have a quarter note on an and. An and quarter note goes to the next. You remember my analogy with the eraser? If you slide the quarter note over to the and, it goes to the next and. Now think about it this way too. Here's a quarter, splits into 2 eighth notes, right? So if that quarter note starts on and, that means the first eighth note would be on and. So it would be and 2. What has to follow an eighth note on 2? And. So you just got to memorize that rule. A quarter note on the and goes to the next and no matter what. So you have 1 and. What comes after an eighth note on and? The next number, which is 3 because 2 was in here. Now, eighth note is kind of the same. Eighth note goes to the next and. We know a quarter note and goes to an and we're done. Because 4 was in here. Okay? Next thing after the counts are the stickings. What are the rules, you two, for eighth note stickings? Right hands are always on what? On the numbers. So if you forgot that, this is why we're here. Okay, it's a good review. We're making a win out of a weird situation with COVID, right? With your schedule. So all the numbers get a right. Don't put a sticking on a rest. Okay, so that means all the rest of the ands are on what, Nathan? All the other ands are on what hand? Lefts. All the ands are lefts. Okay? We're actually gonna practice counting this because I think it has more context, okay? There is a special way that we're learning counting this year. We're trying it differently, so it'll be new for you. But let's just try to count it first. Now this is your eighth note, right? 1 and 2 and, right? Now this is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and. Now did you notice the different way I counted this one versus this one? What did I do differently? I whispered. I went 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Yeah, and how did I count this? 1 and 3 and. Well, I stretched out the and, didn't I? Okay. Now, I want you to listen to something. I'm going to clap both in a row. I'm not going to count or anything. Okay, ready? Do they sound the same? Yeah. Okay, because look, it's 1 and 3 and. And what is this one? 1 and 3 and. The only difference is there's a rest on this one. Now you're asking yourself, why would they write it differently if it sounds exactly the same? Aren't you asking yourself that question? Do you think they're doing it just to trick you? No. They're not. What they're trying to do is, you need to realize that rests are an equal part of music. It's silence. So think about the larger instruments like bass drum and timpani. When you hit them, do they go thunk like my clap or your pad? No, they last long. They go boom, right? So the composer, if they want silence, you're going to have to mute the drum and stop it. So you, on the rest, you would actually mute and make it short. 1 and 3 and. You would actually create silence by stopping the vibration. You get it? And then on this one, they want it long. So you wouldn't mute it. You would go boom, 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 boom. So you wouldn't hear that silence. Now, if I were a wind player, here's the way it would sound. Da 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 da. Did you hear I held out the quarter note long? And I didn't hold it out there because of the silence. Now here's the other reason why we hold out the quarter. If I told you I was going to give you a quarter and I gave you a dime, wouldn't you be like, what? Right? Because we have to give the quarter its full value. Otherwise, we're cheating. We're cheating the music. Just like I'd be cheating you if I didn't give you the full quarter. You get it? So we're going to try to count this. Let's just count it out loud first, and then I'm going to show you the new way we count now. Okay? It's based on some stuff that we're learning in high school with some Indian music counting. We're learning some world music this year. Okay, let's count it. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and. Okay. Any questions so far? Good? Okay, so now here's the way we're going to do it differently. You know how sometimes you tap your toe? 1 and 3 and. Well, we're going to try something with our hands. Okay, so here's the pattern. You're going to clap for 1. Go ahead. We're going to try this. And on 2, you always go to your pinky next. Just kind of put your pinky on the center of your hand. Okay, but you just keep your hand open. Then on 3, we go to our ring finger. And then on 4, we'll go to our middle finger. Then we'll go back to a 1. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Try it. Join me. Get it? Always go to your pinky after the clap, okay? And you know your middle finger is always the last one, okay? Here we go. So now we're going to put that with the beat. Now what we're going to do is we're going to count that rhythm while we do this. Like this. Watch me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and. A little weird, but doable. It's going to work on your coordination. Yeah. So this kind of turns into kind of like you don't even think about it. You just kind of can think about other things, and this kind of happens by muscle. Okay? Different. But trust me, it's going to help, okay? Plus, it always shows you where the phrase is, because you don't have to think about where 1 is, because the clap will show you where 1 is. Okay? Cool. Let's try it. I start the tal. This is called the tala, or the tal. And I start it, and then you copy it, and then we go. I go first. Now you. Ready? Go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3 and. How'd you do? Better, right? Okay? So this one is actually one of the hardest ones. So we're going to keep going, okay? All right, now I'm going to start to move faster, okay? All right, here we go. A quarter note on 1 always has to go to what? The next number, 2, then 2 and 3. 3 goes to 4, right? Because it's a quarter note. 4 and. Now, this is 1. What has to follow an 8th note on 1? and that's a rest, so it's parentheses. What has to follow an and after an eighth rest? 2. And so that's going to be 2 and let's just keep going. Okay? Okay, so numbers are rights. Plug it in. A lot more rights this time, isn't there? Okay, now the ands, or the tays, are lefts. We have to if we have a systematic way to approach things, we're going to have more success. Okay? So I'm just trying to teach you how to do all these little steps. Okay, think about how you're going to count this. Let's say it out loud first. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. What are you noticing? Similar to number 2, number 3 has a rhythm, and then it's the same rhythm, but it looks different. Did you notice that? Okay, so this is a weird concept. So check this out. I think this one's one of the harder ones. If we go 1, 2, and this one is 1, 2, and, doesn't this sound just like a quarter note? Right? If I clap it, it would go like this. Just I'm going to do the first part. 1, 2, and this one is 1, 2, and. It's the same thing, right? So whenever you have an eighth note on a number followed by an eighth rest, what I would do is I would circle it. Do it. Circle it. But it has to be an eighth note on a number, not an eighth rest on a number. Because this essentially, and beat 3 as well, right? Look, these two. That essentially creates a what in your brain? A quarter note. Okay? So if you circle it, you go, oh, that's just a quarter note basically. Now, of course, if we played on bass drum or timpani, you would have to what on the rest? You'd have to mute it and create the silence. But for our purposes, on our pad, we can just think like a quarter note if we circle it. Okay? All right, so let's try it with a tala. Ready and count. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay? Now, don't even whisper the and this time because we circled it and we're thinking about it just like measure 1 where we had a quarter note. Okay? And then you'll see how easy this is. Number 3. Ready, go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, can you all count louder? We're just going to start it all at the same time. Ready, and go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. Now I heard you say and on 3. Try it again. Ready, go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Good? So the major thing, especially for you, this is a good review for you guys, but especially for you two, the major takeaway here is when you have an eighth note on a number followed by an eighth rest, you circle those pairs and you think of it like a quarter note so you make your life easier. Okay? So going on to number 4. Now, the takeaway here is an eighth note that has the flag down is the same as an eighth note that has the flag beamed. These are going to be identical measures again. Okay? The first, I caught a 6th grader messing this up yesterday at Sartarsha. Should we do this? 1? No, it doesn't matter if it's a rest or a note. The very first thing is 1. So this rest is a 1, but in parentheses, of course. And then it's 1, eighth note, and 2, and 3, and 4, and then we know this is going to be the same thing, even though it looks different. We have to learn all the different looks, okay? I'll tell you what, as we go through this, 1, 2, ready, go, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and. Ready, go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, and 4 and. It's okay. Try it again. Ready, go. And 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. 2 would be right, 4 would be right. So the rest of the ands will be lefts. So that's going to be left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right, left. No problem. Number 5. We have 8 notes to start, so that's going to be 1 and we know this is going to be 2. Now what kind of rest is that? Quarter rest, so it's going to last a full beat, right? So it's going to go take us all the way to 3. 3 and then this is a full 4. This one's not written differently at all, is it? So it's just the same thing over here. How could they have made it look differently to maybe give you a different look? Yeah, exactly, Quincy. They could have put the flags down. Would it have been the same thing? Yeah. What's another thing they could have done? They could have made this quarter rest into 2 eighth rests. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to confuse them now. All right, ready? Straight to the tala. 1. And ready and go. 1 and 2, 3. Oh, there's no and. That's a full quarter. So what I would do is when you have a quarter, you think long. So on that 2, on that rest, you're going to go 2. You got to think long, okay? 1. Ready, go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Let's try it again. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Now, why do we whisper the rests? They are significant. They're important. But now we have the what? The tala. Do you think the tala will help us not mess up the rests? And I bet you count better. So don't whisper the rests anymore. Just use your tala to help you. Okay? So it'll look like this. 1 and 3 and 1 and. Who already thinks that's going to be easier? Yes. The whisper, if we have the tala being used, the whisper maybe is not needed. Okay? Let's try it. 1, 2, no whisper, rest, go. 1 and 3 and 1 and 3 and. Who like that? You see how this kind of helps us? Takes away some responsibilities from our counting. Okay. Obviously, numbers are rights and ands are lefts. It's starting to make sense? Okay, number 6. Okay. We have this quarter note on 1, of course. Now, we have an eighth rest, but we know it's going to be on what beat? What has to follow that quarter note? You want to say and, don't you? But don't, okay, look. Don't even pay attention to what's there. What has to come after a quarter note? That's a quarter note. Okay, so this is the classic. You can't forget how to crawl just because you learn how to walk. A quarter note, if y'all saw this earlier and I said, okay, guys, here's a bunch of quarter notes. What comes after 1? You would say 2. Now I said, what comes after 1 on a quarter note? And you said and. Do you see how you're not remembering the easy stuff? So you have to know, okay, that's 2. No matter what it is. So here it is. I'm going to say this one time. Just look up here real quickly. Don't get caught up on what you're trying to identify. Look at where you came from. You can just cover it up. What has to come after that? What has to come after that? 2. So don't let this mess you up. Now that's a rest. So I'm going to put parentheses. And now it's an eighth rest. So after 2 is and. Yeah? Do you see my point? So that's why we're here, though. We're here to learn from that kind of stuff. Okay? Now we know this is the same. 3, 4, and. This is getting real sloppy down here. Sorry, guys. Beginners. We're seeing our first dotted note. First off, we know it's going to be the same, right? 1 and 3 and. We know numbers will be rights. We know ands or tays will be lefts. So write that in first, and then we're going to have our first dotted note lesson. We're going to have a dotted note lesson here because I don't like the way a lot of people teach dotted notes, so I kind of have my own way. Okay? Whole note. How many beats are in a whole note? 4 beats. How many beats are in a half note? 2. How many beats are in a quarter? 1, because a quarter note is a beat. What's missing? 3. So how do we get 3? We have to have some kind of dotted rhythm. Okay, and I'll explain why in a second. Now, it's going to be a dotted half. Okay? I'll explain why. Okay? When you see that extra dot, it's adding something. Yes? Okay? So obviously it added 1 more. So here's the way a lot of people teach it. They teach, oh, a dot on a note means you add half the value of the note. Who's already confused? So here's what they mean. Well, what note is dotted? Well, this half note is dotted. How many beats is a half note worth? So what's half the value of 2? 1. So add 1, and how many beats do you have? 3. But do you see how it was a little wordy? It was a little confusing. So here's the way I think about it. Say dotted note. How many syllables are in dotted note? 3. So the magic number is 3 for dotted note. Whenever you go dotted note, wait, what is dotted note? You got to think, okay, dotted note. That's going to give you your first clue. Okay? Now, let's say we're dealing with half notes. What does a half note break down to in the family tree? Quarters. So we're going to do dotted note 3/4. And if we have 3/4, how many beats is that? 3. Now, what I like about this rule is it can apply to everything. Okay, I'm going to erase this for a second. Here's a quarter note. What does a quarter note break down into? Whole, half, quarter. A quarter is 1/4. So if you cut that in half, it's 1/8. Because you keep doubling the number, right? Okay, so it breaks down into 8 notes, silly pants. All right? Now, if I add a dotted note, I have 3 8 notes. Okay? It's that simple. You got a half note, right? A half note underneath a half note or quarter notes, right? In the family tree? Exactly. It's worth 3/4 notes. Okay? What if I had a dotted quarter? What lives underneath quarter notes? 8 notes, right? So this will be worth, yeah. It's so simple, you're like, it can't be that simple. I'm confused. Get it? Now let's do the next one. If you had a dotted 8th note, what do 8 notes break down to? 16 notes. So it would be worth 3 16th notes. And then if you did a dotted 16th, that would be worth 3 32nd notes. Yeah. So do you like my way a little bit better than talking about add half the value of the note? Yeah. Now, we'll review it again, okay? So just trust me. Now, here's another reason why I like thinking dotted note, because you can use it when you count. Check this out. We're going back to this lesson. At this tempo, this is 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. Can we clap that? Ready, and go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. Okay? Now, when we get to this one, you can simply think the dotted note rhythm. You could go like this. Dotted note, and 1. Because we know that it has 3 8 notes in there because that's a quarter. So you think, well, how fast are 8 notes? So you're going to say, that's how fast you're going to say it. Dotted note, and dotted note. And try it. 2, ready, go. Dotted note, and dotted note, and. Doesn't that help? So I like this because it helps us figure it out faster, and then you can actually use it when you count. I'll make a couple different dotted notes up, okay? Dotted note, 4, dotted note, and dotted note, and dotted note, 1, 2, dotted note, and all right? So if I use this dotted note rhythm, it's going to help, okay? One, 2, ready, and go. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and dotted note, and dotted note, and. A little weird, right? Now, we have the stickings written in there. I think it's time to try this. I know we have 6 more, but it's time to try this on the pad. All right, now we're going to drum those 6 so we can kind of just put it to use instead of being on the board all day. All right, let's do the check pattern. I know this is review, but it's always good to review. Check yourself first. There, now you look better. Check pattern. 1 and 2 and ready, look at the music, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and no downbeat. Stop on the end. Okay. Number 1. You have the stickings and the counts written in. What's the rules for 8th notes? Rights are on numbers. And you have it written in, yeah? Okay, so use it, okay? Number 1. 1, 2, ready, go. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And very good. Number 2. 1, number 2, ready and go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 3